This week on Two Legs, Abbey Road, Paul McCartney. What's our thoughts on the whole thing?
Also, the recent passing of Ginger Baker, which happened today, sadly.
And who the hell am I? I'm not even sure, but maybe we'll find out.
Hi, McCartney fans, and welcome to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. We are a Paul McCartney talk show mainly dealing with Paul's solo career. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Tom Hunyadi, and you may know me from my other show, Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles videocast. This week I am joined by my new partner in crime, my buddy, Andy Nichols. Andy, how are you doing, my friend?
Good, Tom. How you doing tonight? Welcome. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being here. And, is it me or is there somebody else here?
I think we've gone from 2 legs to 3 legs.
To 3 legs. Very good, very good. Well,
and I understand that reference.
Yes, very Perfect. Well, the opening intro theme music that you heard was produced, written, performed, and all that good stuff by this gentleman right here, Mr. Dylan Seavey. Dylan, how you doing, my friend?
I'm great, Tom. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're here. So, we got to meet, was it last year you were on tour with, or was it earlier this year?
Earlier this year. I think I reached out to you late last year, then we met.
Right, yes. You were on tour with your buddy, Mr. Ron Gallo, who we'll get to in a little bit. But, when I found out that you were, a drummer or a musician or whatnot, I was thinking to myself, one day it would be really cool if I can get this guy, to do some music for 2 Legs. And I feel very fortunate that you were there and were able to do this for us. But and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I appreciate someone thinking that I was cool enough to do something like that, which I most absolutely am not.
There you go. I love the modesty there. But anyway, before we get to that, let's just talk about you for a minute. And you reached out to us in the past, I think, saying how much you like the show, and I'm just curious about just talk about your fandom of all things Beatles, and when did that start, and
Sure. So when I was 8 years old and listening to a wide variety of artists, including Shania Twain and Leanne Rimes and Smash Mouth and the Rugrats movie soundtrack, my family got their first computer that had this magical thing called a CD burner, and you could make these wonderful things called CD mixes.
Okay.
So I made my first one, and being 8 years old, I was entertained for about 37 minutes. And then I wanted to make another one, and I just didn't know that much music. I knew some, what you might call, quote-unquote, real music. I fell asleep every night to Harvest Moon by Neil Young.
Cool.
Yeah,
Nice.
knew a little Fogerty, a little Clapton. I knew I was named after Bob Dylan, but I kind of only knew the silly stuff off of the Basement tapes. It didn't matter whether it was Backstreet Boys or Eric Clapton. It was all the same. But when I wanted to make my second mix, I think my dad decided that he had had enough and he gave me the White Album when I was 8 years old, which...
What a perfect album to be introduced to at 8 years.
Certainly was.
Theoretically, the Beatles are perfect for an 8-year-old boy, with I Want to Hold Your Hand and Yellow Submarine, but my dad went straight to Wild Honey Pie and Revolution 9, and I remember my childhood in such passing memories. Like, I don't have a whole lot of great recollections, but I so vividly remember sitting cross-legged on my old bedroom floor next to this boombox, just flipping through these lyrics and these pictures. And I know it's so cliche to pinpoint an exact moment that your life changes, but that was it. And he gave me that, and he gave me Nirvana MTV Unplugged. And my guess is that he was actively trying to screw me up as much as possible. Well, and he succeeded, which is great.
Awesome. I think we should actually get him on the show and kick you out of here.
My dad is infinitely more interesting and better looking than I am. So, I'll get you his contact info. We'll set that up. He's great.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So, I literally set up pots and pans in my kitchen the next day, and I wanted to play drums, and I immediately...
So then you would say that the White Album influenced you to play drums?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really just wanted to be a musician after hearing that record, and I wanted to know everything about this band, and I immediately sought out everything they had, and very soon thereafter got into the solo music. I actually think that on my second CD mix, in addition to the White Album, there's some tracks from All Things Must Pass on there. Nice. My dad had that on CD as well.
So did your dad have most of the stuff then, or for you to discover, or did you have to buy some of it too?
He only had one other CD, but he had a bunch of records. And so I eventually got into the records. The second CD that he had was Let It Be, and I remember putting it on, and I was kind of confused because the White Album is such an outlier in the discography. It doesn't sound like anything else. But, after listening to a song or two, I was like, okay, I recognize that voice, and I recognize that voice. And then I was already so obsessed with them. And then I remember being in the car with my grandma, and she had on an oldie station, and something like Please Please Me or For Me to You came on. She was like, hey, look, it's your favorite band. I'm like, shut up. No, it's not. Like, you're crazy. and that made me all the more fascinated. Like, how is this the same band? And that's why they've continued to fascinate, I think, all of us for so many years. Like, how in the span of 7 years did they go from point A to point B? They're the best.
Mind-blowing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So then talk about becoming a musician now. So you're 8, you're getting all the pots and pans out, you're starting to bang away. And where did that lead to? Did you have any other musicians in your family, or were you the first and you just started, you taught yourself, or did your parents help you get lessons and whatnot?
Well, my dad can't carry a tune in a bucket and certainly can't play anything. My mom, she could play a little piano, and she can sing pretty well too, but no professional musicians in the family, no one who's ever done it to any greater degree. And I took drum lessons for about a year, maybe a year and a half, right at the top there when I was 8, 9 years old. Okay. And, he taught me, my buddy Ben DeFusco, who played guitar for Wyclef Jean for a little bit.
Okay, cool.
He taught me how to read music and how to play a couple standard beats. And then I took more lessons when I was in 6th grade for maybe half a year. And then when I was in college, I took jazz lessons for a couple semesters. But for the most part, I've been playing for 20 years and mostly self-taught, which shines through in the fact that I'm not all that good. But
well, good enough.
good enough to somehow have some money in my bank account.
Right.
And,
well,
so
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I've been doing that for 20 years, but also I've been writing lyrics and melodies in my head for just as long. And then when I was around 14, I finally picked up a guitar so I could be able to put these lyrics and melodies to some actual music rather than just the drums.
Okay.
And so I've been playing guitar for about 14, 15 years now, and here I am.
Very cool. So now, within these last 20 years, were there any other drummers that, were an inspiration for your playing? Did you, were you discovering other drummers out there, to keep you interested in the instrument?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I tell everyone that if there's anything I ever do that's somewhat remotely cool, I probably learned it from John Bonham or Keith Moon. And if I ever am grooving pretty well, then I probably learned that from either Ringo or Levon.
Okay.
And, those guys have always been big. Certainly Charlie Watts, all the classic rock guys. I mean, because that's what I immediately got into. The Beatles opened up the floodgates to, the Stones, Hendrix, Janis, the Doors, so on and so forth. And being a songwriter myself, I have also been really influenced by a lot of guys who really play for the song. Guys like Stan Lynch, the first drummer in the Heartbreakers, and session guys, Jim Keltner, Kenny Buttrey, all those guys, and certainly a lot of modern drummers as well. Patrick Keeler's played with the Greenhorns and the Rockin' Tours, is an unbelievable player. There's so many of them that I couldn't even begin to. Some of the best drummers I've ever heard are some friends of mine who live here in Nashville, and I go to see them play, and I end up going home and kicking myself for not being as good as they are. And that's one of the simultaneously great and terrible things about living in this city, is being surrounded by so many people who do what you do, and most of them do it better. And it's great because it inspires you to try to be better.
Nashville right now is like pretty much the music capital of the states these days. Wouldn't you say?
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about Nashville is that I think most people associate it with country music, and there certainly is a lot of country music here, but there's everything. I mean, I've been playing with Ron for the last 3 years. I mean, he's a garage rocker. I mean, there's a hip hop scene here. There's an EDM scene, a metal scene, a pop scene. Anything you can find, and it's not even just the popular country stuff. I mean, there's really great Americana here. Classic country, blues, folk. Everything. And
Bourdain did a show there, I think, in one of his about maybe 2 seasons ago, and had one of my favorite female artists or singers on there, Margot Price, and really, really cool to see her. I got to see her live last year, but and he was talking about all the diversity in music that's down there right now, and it's pretty amazing. So I'll definitely have to get out there and check that scene.
Same. I've never been, so I'd love to go too.
So one day, we might be knocking on your door, looking to bum on your couch or something like that.
Well, look, if you stay on my couch, you're gonna have to deal with my cats, who are the 2 single greatest cats. Well, they're not single. There's 2 of them, but they are the 2 greatest cats in the world. They might not let you sleep too much, but they are
fair enough,
completely sweet, and you'll love them.
So now, for while your love of the Beatles, all things Beatles, was growing, then you found a way, or you started writing about the Beatles, and then found yourself writing for Something Else Reviews. Is that right?
So I've never actually had anything published that I've written about the Beatles, but Something Else Reviews is run by my friend Nick DeRisa and Kid O'Toole, your partner in crime at Talk More Talk. She also does the Deep Beatles column for them, and so I would absolutely never even try to step on her turf there. But Something Else is such a cool site. They have so many album reviews, concert reviews, in-depth articles, but they also have a lot of these really cool series that Kit does where they go kind of song by song.
Right.
Really great writer. Mark Zaleski has done a song by song review Springsteen's career,
Right.
which is always fascinating to read. I believe Nick himself has done that for the band as well.
Okay.
And so I discovered it, and I actually then ended up, I started writing a song by song analysis of Tom Petty's career.
Okay.
Because Petty is a remarkably huge influence in my life. And so I got through the first album's worth of songs, and I think I did the first couple on his second album. And then, I was a 23, 24-year-old trying to figure out life, and that got the best of me. And I still text Nick about once every other month, like, one of these days I'm gonna pick it back up. But he actually let me write a tribute to Tom after he passed away.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Which was just over 2 years ago now, which is already so crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And that was a really important thing for me to do. But I do tentatively have about a 34,000 word piece written up on all of the solo albums. And so I'm still figuring out exactly what I want to do with it, if I want to expand on it, if I want to scrap it and rewrite it. I'm leaning towards eventually having my own podcast on it one day, because I'm a white man with an opinion. So obviously I need to have a podcast.
Obviously.
No, but it's great. I mean, like I said, I've been obsessed with this band for the last 20 years, and certainly with the solo work, but I've also always been oddly fascinated with lists and ranking things. I think that there's something really fascinating about trying to quantify the unquantifiable. Because it's all subjective. There is no greatest band of all time, but on the other hand, it's the Beatles. There is no greatest song, but on the other hand, it's like a Rolling Stone. And that's always been fun to me, and I think it's because when I was getting into music, I ate up all of the, Rolling Stone 500 greatest albums, 100 greatest artists, all of that stuff, and I discovered so much through that, and I think that shaped me. And generally, if I'm bored or really not doing too well in my life, my friends will text me random things like, top 10 Bob Dylan covers, go, or top 10 McCartney bass lines, go. And
go.
So I was at the gym about a year and a half ago on the elliptical, trying to distract myself from the fact that I was trying to work out, and this video came up of someone ranking all the solo records. And of course it's all subjective, but the more I watched it, I was like, man, this guy is so wrong about everything. And so I immediately went home and put them all in chronological order and went through it. And it was great because there were a lot of records I just hadn't listened to in 15 plus years. There were some that I had just never gotten around to, either because I had never gotten around to it or because I had preconceived notions like, I don't need to listen to McCartney 2, I know it's all synth based, so why would I listen to that? But this made me go back, and ever since then, for the last year and a half, I've been completely entrenched, and it's ruined multiple relationships, and I've genuinely forgotten how to be a functioning member of society at points because of it. But the great thing about it is that it's led me to discover Two Legs and so many other great shows like this. It led me to pick up Tune In by Mark Lewison, and so many other great books. And because I listened to all of them, and I put together the ranking, and then took a step back, looked at it, and said, I need to do it again. You can't do it after just because some of the albums I'd only heard once. I'm like, well, you can't fairly judge an album after one listen.
Yeah, it's something that you need years of listening and analyzing.
Oh yeah,
and it's something that it can't be done on a first listen basis. I don't think.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it takes, and you could do it one time one day of the week and then do it, and
Right.
have a whole different list and configuration a week later.
Exactly, because I put them all together, and then I went to go do it again, and less than a month later, and there were certain records I'm like, oh, that's up 25 spots from the last time I did this. Or, the first time I listened, I see, Andy, your London Town posted there in the back. Like, the first time I listened to that record, I was like, yeah, it's okay. It has a couple good songs. But then on the second time, it was, whoa, like, where has Don't Let It Bring You Down been my whole life?
Right.
Where's I'm Carrying been my whole life,
Right.
And that's so great. And so, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with this project yet. I think it inevitably will lead to some sort of podcast or series, but it's definitely completely psychotic, but also right and inarguable, because, I know what I'm talking about. So.
Of course you do. And I can't wait to hear this list, so I can text you up and say, what the hell are you thinking?
And tell me how wrong. Well, and one of the reasons also that I want to do it is that, opinions in general are simultaneously not at all important and completely important, because I think for the arts, debate is so necessary, and talking about these things is so necessary, because it forces all of us to examine, when we debate with someone who might not agree with us, it forces us to examine why we feel the way that we feel, or why you might feel the way you feel. And whether or not it actually changes your opinion, it forces you to think of it more than just the surface level. Oh, well, I listened to this and I liked it, or I listened to this and I didn't like it. And the other side of that coin is that opinions are useless. Like, they're all subjective, but it's also your own personal fact. And it's all a contradiction, and I'm fascinated.
Well, my biggest thing is that if you don't like it, I want to know why. I just don't want to say you don't like it. Why don't you like it?
Right.
Take the time to form your opinion on it, and what don't you like about Drumming Is My Madness? What is about that song that you don't like?
Right.
I will
Maybe because there's not very good drumming in that song, or
I will wait until my inevitable Stop and Smell the Roses podcast to go into my thoughts on Drumming Is My Madness. But with I've recently been touring with great singer-songwriter named Aaron Lee Tasjan, and the entire van is very obsessed with Stop and Smell the Roses, both as a musical piece and just conceptually. It's something.
Yeah.
Sounds like a van ride I need to take one of these days.
Yeah.
Well, whenever I meet or talk to Allan Kozin for the first time, I know that he said before that it's one of his top Ringo choices. So we have a lot to discuss.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. Well, before we get into our next bit, let's talk about touring and recording with Ron Gallo here. Let me get couple shots here. This is is this your first cover that you appeared on a record, or was it the album after Heavy Meta?
Well, I'm technically on the cover of Heavy Meta. If you look at
yes, I see it now. Right under the E on Meta.
It's a bunch of VHS tapes that were then photoshopped out with photos of us.
Right.
I had been on record covers before of my band back home in Rhode Island.
And that band is called?
Dylan Seavey and the Gentlemen.
Okay.
And so, and we're actually doing a homecoming show this December when I go home for the holidays, and we have stuff online that I'm embarrassed by, not because I think it's bad, but because I recorded them when I was young and didn't know how to sing, and now I'm older and don't know how to sing.
Still don't know
better.
How to
sing. But yeah, so I started playing with Ron full time back in 2016, and I've been touring on and off with different bands since 2013 or 2014. And Ron is now taking a little bit of a break, and I think moving forward, he'll be doing something different. But he's Ron's one of my great friends, and he's still here in town. We were going to try to watch some football together today, but it didn't work out. So next time, though he's a dirty Eagles fan, but that's another story for another time. So there we go.
Look out, you got a Giants fan over there. So.
Double.
Okay. Well,
double thumbs down on that.
We'll save this for the NFL podcast.
Yeah.
That three of us start. But
well, that's cool.
But yeah, right up until my my most recent tour with him was this last summer. We were just in Europe for 6 weeks, I think, and we got to go to, I think, 11 or 12 different countries together, and at somewhere between 35 and 40 states together, I think. We got to play a lot of music, and it's definitely, it's really interesting, my whole life wanting to be a performing musician and actually having it be a reality, and go out to San Francisco, California, and there's people there to hear the music that you helped create. I mean, that's such an insane idea in my head still to wrap my head around. And yeah, man, and then Tom, you got to come see us in Phoenix, and
that was amazing. That was
I saw you get in the mosh pit there, and I wish I had video evidence of that, because it was miraculous and fantastic. And,
no, but you're awesome. You threw in a little what Come Together in there in one of the songs, and that was nice little touch, and had a great time. You're one of those guys. You're one of those drummers that looks like you're always having a good time drumming.
I mean,
you can definitely tell that you're enjoying what you're doing, and I think that's great.
I mean, I don't think you should do something that you don't want to do. I mean, you're never going to love what you do 100% of the time. And
right.
I certainly don't love being a touring musician 100% of the time. I think if you can love what you do 75% of the time, then you're golden. And like I said,
once you're in the private jets, I'm sure you'll start enjoying it 100% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an inevitability, so just waiting on that. But I mean, like I said, for the last 20 years, I haven't wanted to do anything else. But before that, I had fever dreams of being the next Larry Bird, or being a paleontologist.
You're talking my language now, buddy. Larry Bird. Growing up in Detroit, it wasn't very popular being a Larry Bird. Let me tell you.
No, not there.
No, not there at all.
My dad taped all of the games from the 80s with them playing the Lakers and the Rockets, and he was able to get the audio feed from the radio with Johnny Most calling the games. Johnny Most, the legendary. Just absolutely, and that was my introduction.
Right.
And
nice.
So, but yeah, for the last 20 years, it hasn't been I convinced myself at one point, like, I'll be a journalist because I like writing, and I'm not terrible at it, so maybe that's it. But I was completely kidding myself. I'm pathetically bad at anything that doesn't relate to music in one way or another. And I really do love what I do, and I'm really, really lucky to get to be able to do it, even when it's extremely hard, or even when I'm scrambling to make a little bit extra money or whatever it is. It's I couldn't ask for a better thing to be obsessed with. Right. So I'm glad that you liked it. I'm glad that you caught the come together bit that I threw in just for you.
Oh, it's really meant a lot, man. Thanks a lot.
Andy, can you leave us alone for a minute?
I gotta go.
So anyways, let's get to so at the top of the show, we heard one of the bits that you did for us on the last episode, the first episode Annie and I did together. We heard your 1985 that opened the show, and then our I think we're gonna leave Sing Along Junk as our closer for now, until I can convince you to do something else. But we're good for now.
Okay.
But
the deal has been honored.
Yes, exactly. So, but this bit was Crino Core, which I was really excited to hear your version of, because of all the you can't necessarily do everything's spot on these days. I don't even think we would have been able to, because of copyright laws and stuff like that. I don't know if we would have been able to, have a spot on rendition of Karina Core and have it on, YouTube or whatnot because of their strict, copyright laws, but or policies, I should say. But
so my whole life is about skirting the law. So
yeah, right. So talk about that, because I know we had a few conversations about, you had a couple ideas and I had a couple ideas, and I'm glad that you went through with the Karina course. So talk about that, doing that for a minute.
Yeah. So I want to quickly give a shout out to my friend Paul DeFiglia, who lives here in Nashville. He let me go over to his studio and record these tracks, and we had such a great time. He's an incredible producer. And I ended up getting to use a vintage 70s Gretsch kit that he had there in the studio. And he also had part of the kit that was used on the first Violent Femmes record.
Oh, so, very cool.
Cool.
Whenever you want me to do the Blister in the Sun sound-alike,
absolutely,
just let me know. I'll head over there. And,
I got to see them do that whole first album live. It was great.
Oh, that's so cool. And we got to record these to tape, which was awesome, rather than digitally, which I thought was appropriate for making the sound-alikes from this time period.
Right.
So for all three of the sound-alikes, Karina Core, Junk, and 1985, I just studied what elements made each song significant. So for Karina Core, that's obviously the drums, which is my first and best instrument. And we'll do a podcast at some point that delves further into Paul's drumming style. But keeping in mind that I just wanted to emulate what he was doing on drums, I didn't really plan much of it out. I wanted to go in and improvise because I assume that's what he did for the track. Right. And on the original, there's clearly a few different drum tracks superimposed over one another. So I laid down a basic track playing not a beat necessarily, but just a basic sort of, bass fills and cymbal hits, and then I overdubbed a second track to augment it, give it that sort of tribal feel. And then that was really it. Then I added the heavy breathing, which I think was extremely awkward for both me and Paul, the producer. And he slapped some great reverb and distortion on it, and it was everything we did was one take. One take for the basic track, one overdub, and so that was really fun. I was really happy with how that one came out.
Yeah, so was I. I thought that was great. So, and then now, did you play the piano on the sing-along Junk?
I did on sing-along Junk.
Okay.
Yeah, so for that in 1985, I focused on each song's instrumentations, chord progressions, rhythmic patterns, melodic movements, so on and so forth. And I certainly wanted to make sure I wasn't straight up copying anything, so I took those into consideration, figured out the best way to slightly tweak them so they only emulated the originals. And for Junk, there's so many cool defining features of that song, and I love that Andy's repping the McCartney One shirt right now.
Yeah.
The melody in and of itself is so memorable and fascinating, and it has this haunting effect, between starting off on the minor chord, moving against that waltz time signature. And so I maintained the simplicity of the melody, but I played with the rhythm of it a bit, and then using the original chord progression as a template to figure out where I should start and eventually end up, I just sort of changed everything in between. The original's in F sharp minor. I wrote it in A minor. And then, so I played the acoustic guitar, the piano, the drums with the brushes, and then added on a mellotron with a string effect. And then Paul, the producer, he played bass because he's a huge McCartney fan. He has the style down pat.
Very cool.
If I had done it, it would have taken way, way, way too long. And then for 1985, the piano is obviously the most important part, which sucked for me because I'm a miserable pianist. But I was able to write the part, and then Paul played it. And so McCartney wrote a lot of piano songs where the left hand, which is on the lower keys of the piano, plays these alternating octaves, like doom, 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 doom. It's the same note, but different frequencies. Let 'Em In is another famous example of that, the doom, 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 with everything else going on here. So I added that in, then kind of figured out what he was doing in the right hand on the higher keys, and played a similar rhythm, but with an ascending melody rather than a descending melody. That one, again, the original's in C minor. I also wrote that in A minor because apparently that was the key I was feeling that day. And so then Paul also played the bass on that one, which is super important to the driving rhythm of that song. And I added a simple kind of Paul-style beat behind it and the shaker, which adds so much.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the same Mellotron that I put on Junk found this really cool sort of aerospace effect to pay homage to that little break in the original. And yes, I mean, that was the whole process, and it was super fun getting to study those songs. And you know, I think they sound about like a quarter as good, so which is, you know, I think a win, all things considered.
Right.
How long did it take you? How long did it take you to do all that, all the tracks?
Recording, I think I got there. We probably got started around 11, and then we were done by 3:30. So, wow. And that's with, you know, setup and you know, bouncing things from the tape machine to the computer and making sure that the mixes weren't terrible. So, about 4.5 hours total.
Not bad.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because you had done it. Did you do? Because you sent me what I think 1985 and then Junk. Did you do that like at home or whatnot, or just messing around those parts?
Yeah, I recorded those just in the GarageBand app on my phone. Which is just about the only place that I can play piano, because I can record like every key separately and create the big thing. Yep, and yeah, writing those demos, that didn't take too long either, again, because it was just like, okay, this is the basic template of what I'm supposed to work with, and so now I just need to make it a little different, so hopefully I don't get sued.
Gotcha. Very good. Well,
and if I do, I know that you'll pay for it. So.
Yeah, let's hope they don't shut us down. But it's funny. Well, it's not funny, I should say, but it's kind of ironic or weird having a drummer on the show today, and then unfortunately we had the passing of an amazing drummer, and Annie's going to get into a little bit of Ginger Baker, who unfortunately passed today at 80 years old. Was it Sunday? What's the date today? Is 6.
Yeah.
So give us, Dylan, just take a second and I mean, have you listened to much of Cream or Blind Faith, Ginger Baker drumming style? And what did you think of his drumming style as a drummer yourself?
No, I mean, Ginger's great, and I think for me, again, being so exposed to and influenced by classic rock growing up, it was pretty hard to escape that. And Ginger is so cool because he came from a jazz background. You know, he studied, Buddy Rich and Gene Krupa and those guys, and Ginger was obviously so powerful. But kind of what set him apart from a guy like Bonham and Keith Moon, who were also really hard hitters, was that he had, and I don't want to disrespect those guys, because John Bonham at the end of the day might be my favorite drummer of all time, but and had a lot of great technical chops, but Ginger had such a great musical understanding of what he was doing and had this incredible swing that he could incorporate at any point at any time. And I love Cream. Disraeli Gears was a really, really big part of my teenage years. Learning Sunshine of Your Love, I think, is a must for any up and coming drummer. It's such a cool pattern, and the way that it matches up against the bass and the guitar and how they're playing it. There's a great tune on there called She Was Like a Bearded Rainbow.
Okay.
That has just an amazing drum part. But probably my favorite thing that Ginger was a part of was Blind Faith. I mean, what a
great album.
Great album.
Perfect
Great
6-song record. I mean, Had to Cry Today is one of the most perfect 8-minute excursions that I've ever heard of. All of those tunes are so good, and they are so locked in, and And of course, we can't be on a Paul McCartney podcast without mentioning that Paul got to record Picasso's last words.
We're going to get to that in a few minutes. As soon as we shut you up, we're going to get
Look, my girlfriend is sitting downstairs right now, and she is probably so angry that I am talking as much as I am. And she should be. And everyone watching and listening to this should be angry.
Well, listen, we're not angry, but I think we need to I think we have to dispel, I don't know if it's myth or fact that he actually played on Picasso's last words, because I did a little research today, and I don't actually think he played drums on Band on the Run. In fact, I looked at
I don't know. He didn't play drums. What they're talking about is he had a can and filled it with some gravel.
But I think
only contribution.
I took a look at the archive edition of Band on the Run for reference. He was pretty miffed that he wasn't asked to actually play on it proper.
Right.
And Paul said as much. Well, he didn't really want to turn it into a celebrity thing, guest musicians. He just and he had a studio. He had a studio in Lagos anyway, and that's kind of where he hooked up with fellow Ransom Cootie and all that other stuff when he went down to Lagos to record all this. So I think he was a little miffed. Just reading about him today, obviously he was a whacked out guy, and I read an article. I read an article that he rated Ringo as like a 3 and himself as like a 10.
Yeah. 10, right?
Yet, despite all that saltiness, today Ringo just puts out the classic, rest in peace, peace and love post. So
I think he downplayed Bonham and Moon too. Some of your favorite drummers, Dylan.
Moon. How do you downplay Moon? My God.
Yeah.
I mean, watch the Beware Mr. Baker documentary if you guys haven't watched that yet.
I've watched the first 20 minutes.
Yeah. I gotta finish that too. Yeah.
It's a big jazz thing, to be honest. There's I'm forgetting the name of the publication right now, but in the 60s they would do these blind tests with a lot of jazz cats saying oh, who do you think this is? And they did one with Miles, and not only did he guess every single player on every single song, but he was just tearing him to shreds oh, that's so-and-so. He can't play in tune word for shit, So-and-so. It's such... And I mean, I went to school for jazz, and, and I'm not downplaying the genre at all, because if I could listen to one genre for the rest of my life, I'd probably listen to jazz.
My non-Beatles-related favorite album of the 60s is a jazz album.
Yeah, I mean, I love it, but it's definitely, unfortunately, a mentality that sometimes still persists to this day in the jazz community. But yeah, I was thinking about that too, Andy. I never knew for sure whether it was a myth or not, and I don't even know if it's been confirmed if he plays on All Things Must Pass.
Right.
On I Remember Jeep, but...
Right. So and it's funny too, because, he was, not a very, likable guy, I guess you can say.
No, he wasn't, but he was great.
He was great, and he we talked about Blind Faith there for a minute, and he forced his way onto that band. Clapton was trying to get as far away from him as possible, but he just worked his way in, and then I have yet to listen to anything from his Air Force days,
which I think I think tying into the Wings connection that didn't
Denny Lane,
or was it Denny Lane and Henry McCulloch both played with him?
I think it was just Denny Lane. I'll relook into that, but I believe it was just Denny Lane.
Just Denny, right?
But you, Andy, you sent me an interesting piece from the Paul McCartney website earlier, stating that they were going to go to his studio, ACR, I think it's. See, I had always thought that, because he was he wanted to go to just different, EMI recording studios.
Right.
And so, in just different locations. So they picked one in Nigeria, and then that was, Lagos, and that was it. But then you send me this article saying, no, the original idea was to go to his studio.
Right.
And then you see him saying, well, we didn't want to get too celebrity on this album. So, it's just there you go again. It's just what do you believe? And what do you not believe? And I think this would be great because, we've been in contact with Adrian Sinclair and Alan Cozen about this new McCartney Legacy series that they're working on. And I'm sure that they will get to the bottom
Yeah, I think
gets
also I
embodied.
think Ginger was kind of like a peacemaker between Paul and the whole fella
Right.
Ransom Cootie thing when
Yeah.
he showed up and then he was just, oh, you're stealing our music, you're stealing our rhythms. I think Ginger was kind of the peacemaker in that whole thing.
Right.
I think.
When
Right.
Ginger Baker is the peacemaker in a situation, it's really gone to hell. So, but it worked out. So.
Good
Oh,
points. Good,
yes.
excellent point.
Good point. But yeah, rest in peace, Ginger.
Yeah,
Rest in peace.
Amazing drummer, and he probably he'll be remembered for a long time for sure.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So, okay, well, how about we get to the main topic today here, gentlemen?
Let's
We're going to
do
talk Abbey Road, the new.
I wish I had a.
Well,
Can you Photoshop
he'll
that in?
superimpose
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyways, but yeah, this came out. It's been a week now since it's been out, and this is the 2019 remix. It's pretty much 10 years since the 2009 reissues.
Where'd that time go?
Right. Amazing stuff. I was living in Chicago at the time, and where were you, Dylan, in 2009?
Well, I was the ripe old age of 18 years old, and I remember running to the local record store in Wakefield, Rhode Island, where I grew up, to buy it, and my dad was like, well, you can buy it on Amazon for $30 cheaper, and I said, no, I want to buy it. I want it now. I want to support my local record store, and then
There you go.
I got rewarded with a job at that very same record store later that year. And got to work there for 6 years, and I think it's because I bought the $230 box set.
The stereo box set then, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I got the stereo one, and I my dad also ended up getting the mono one.
Mono,
so
very cool. Yeah. Awesome.
he's a completist.
Very cool. Very cool.
Where were you 10 years ago, Andy?
10 years ago, I was finishing up college, working, doing a lot of different things, but I bought that box set the day it came out.
Yeah.
Wasn't going to be stopped. And I got Rock Band 2, which was the same day.
Oh, my God, Rock Band 2.
Yeah, because they both, everything dropped on 9/9/09, as you recall.
Right, yeah.
So that was, I didn't get the mono at the time because that was a little bit out of my budget, but the stereo box set was I got that day, and I thoroughly enjoyed it still. But now, I think this is my go-to now. I think it is.
Okay, really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to be difficult, and I had to buy them all individually. So no box set, but I did get the mono box set. So.
Yeah.
But I think there's something, special for me just going and getting them, album by album rather than just having this
in a box.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes sense to have the box. I mean, I was a box and junkie since the late 80s. I think ever since, I think Rod Stewart or Elton John or one of those guys who was it? Springsteen, I think, put out the first box set in the late 80s, and then it just went crazy from there. I mean, everybody.
His Live 75 to 85
something
box.
like that. Yeah. I think that was it, and then just the gates were just swished open with these box sets, and I was getting every single one of them.
And then Dylan did the
bootleg,
the first bootleg series too in the early 90s there.
Yes, which was also equally cool too.
Yeah. And now we got word on the newest one that's coming out. I think next month or you're coming up soon.
Yeah, that's the Nashville Skyline one.
That'll be a good one.
A lot of stuff with Johnny Cash on that one, so that's going to be an interesting listen. So cool. All right, but so let's start with Andy. I mean, just initially, so did you get it on CD too, or did you just get it on vinyl?
No, both. I bought both. I bought the vinyl. I bought the vinyl and the CD set. So we're just doing the Paul tracks really. So one of the things as a whole, I enjoy it sonically. I mean, I'm hearing songs that I've heard 1,001 times, but you're hearing things, separated vocals, little nuances in instrumentation. Especially stuff with the Moog synthesizer, which sounds really great now in this new mix, especially on songs like "Here Comes the Sun" and. Because I don't want to, because you're going to do this on Talk More Talk, so I don't want to talk about the whole thing. But
well, it's giving me a good practice.
Yeah.
This is a good.
No, but one of the things in terms of like McCartney focus, one of the things I've always been surprised with this set is he dominates really a lot of side 2 with the medley, but.
Right.
Really, I see this album and I don't see like a lot of Paul. Like, I mean, he's got the medley, which he's got all of his parts on there. It's fragments, of course,
Right.
but like it's not a. I don't look at it as a Paul heavy album because it's very fragmented. You have Maxwell Silverhammer, Oh Darling on side 1. That's it.
Right.
That's it for side 1.
I mean, the songs were a lot longer. Or not, I shouldn't say a lot longer, but you're looking at a minute or two longer. Especially with the song like, I Want You, She's So Heavy, which is what, 6 minutes or so.
Longer,
I mean,
probably.
You're looking at a potential. Yeah, you're looking at a potential. There's 2 more songs right there that
right.
Paul could have had on that album.
Right. So and of course it's the yin and the yang between Lennon and McCartney. Right. Lennon likes side 1, McCartney likes side 2. But I mean. Yeah, I've always enjoyed it thoroughly. His contributions. I like the outtakes, obviously a lot better in this set. In fact, although I got to say the Goodbye demo was I thought of not great quality. I mean, I've heard that I've had that on bootleg for decades, and that sounds the same quality on this as it does on that. That was a little disappointing.
Yeah, the word on the street was that came from the bootleg.
Yeah,
and it wasn't really great quality. I think our friend Ed Chen from the When They Was Fab podcast posted something on that.
Yeah, so. that was very disappointing. Also, too, my ear kind of played tricks on me too with the Come and Get It outtake because I thought it was different than the Anthology 3 release. It's just the same. It's the same take. It's just again in this box set issue. I guess they just kind of mixed it a little bit differently. But
right? Yeah, I think that's what they wrote in the book too.
Which I haven't finished reading the liner notes because they're just this. But it's so much.
Just to have that song in an hour completed, and do all the instrumentations,
everything as he's waiting for the other 3 to stroll in because they only live right down the street. So he just walked in, waited, and then just had him in there and just overdubbed everything. The drums, the piano, and it double tracked his vocal too.
Right, and the balls it takes to tell another band that you're giving it to, hey,
do it this way.
Do it this way.
And if you don't do it this way, it won't. Oh, we want to change it up. No, you're doing it this way, and it will be a hit.
And on top of all of that, it still might be the best version of that song. I mean, with all due respect to the Badfinger version, which is great.
It's great.
Right.
Paul's is better, but
I like the Paul version.
I do too, Dylan. I do.
Yeah.
Right. So Dylan, what's you got to listen to the remix, and what were your thoughts on the remix here?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it sounds great, and I have a lot of positive things to say about it. I do want to say that I'm generally of the belief that although these sets are awesome, and I am so glad that we have them for a lot of reasons, I don't personally consider them like the ultimate mixes.
Right, and I don't think you should.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 09 remasters are perfect in the sense that they brought some clarity and density to the recordings while preserving the beauty of the original mixes, especially because I think there's a lot of perfection in what some might call the imperfections of those mixes. And I totally understand why Paul and Ringo and a lot of other people are excited about the bass and drums being more present.
Way up.
Yeah, that's starting to be the norm now with all these sets.
And some tracks over the last 3 sets, they sound, I mean, the title track to Sgt. Pepper kicks ass because of that. But overall, for me, these sets serve a purpose similar to like the anthology sets. It's more of like here's a different way to hear these songs when you don't want to necessarily listen to the normal album. And, there's a few moments on this particular set where I do think they were trying a little too hard to do something different, which I understand because the original mix of this record is so perfect and it's so light years beyond the other original mixes, Sgt. Pepper, White Album, whatever, all of those kind of are similar with the original mixes, like, okay, this and this and this, but Abbey Road, the original mix is amazing. And like, for example, like in Come Together, the bass and drums don't sound as natural to me here because they boosted them, but they were already perfect. And so now maybe it's just because I'm so used to the other mix, but I'm like, well, this doesn't sound quote unquote right to me. And it's same thing in Something. I think the bass and drums are a little too much on that track. And
right.
And like the guitar at the end of Come Together, the volume swells, that I'm like, that sounds unnatural. It doesn't sit as well. And then as far as like the bonus songs go, there's so much great stuff, but I think it's kind of questionable that they included some material that's already been officially, Come and Get It. I understand it's a different mix, and I know that the Something demo now has the piano, but there's multiple recordings that we all know exist. We all know about Here Comes the Sun with the extra guitar solo.
Right.
We know about Something with the big piano coda. Like, why?
Where's the version of Paul singing "I Want You" that's out there?
Right. Exactly.
Where's that?
And isn't there an extended Her Majesty where John is playing
supposedly?
And so it's like, look, I get they're not going to put everything because there's going to be a 75th anniversary in 25 years. So
see, here's the thing: is I think that Her Majesty thing that you were talking about, I think that might be on the Get Back sessions.
Okay,
if I'm not mistaken. I'm on disc 3 of an 86 disc series on that right now, so bootleg series. So if I do find that, I'll report back to you.
I expect to not hear from you again until you finish.
God bless you for going through that, because that's a labor of love to get through all that stuff.
But overall, I mean, there's moments on this set that are just jaw-droppingly great, and I'm thankful for. And like, I know we're gonna go through all the Paul songs, but like, in particular, like Ringo's vocals on Octopus's Garden are so prominent and they sound amazing. And I Want You is perfectly heavy, and the bridge and Here Comes the Sun is spectacular. I have these opinions and criticisms, but I don't want it to take away from the fact that like a great job was done here. And however I interpret or you interpret the usefulness of these sets, like, you can't deny how good and great
listen, Apple's going to always do it. They're going to put it out, a product, whatever they do, it's always going to be top notch, and that's what this is.
Exactly. It's not my personal, it's never going to be my go-to thing, but it might be like, hey, I want to hear Octopus's Garden with that incredible sounding vocal. I want to hear Here Comes the Sun with that Moog, boosted up a little bit. And so
there are some great advantages or great finds on this remix. You made some good points there, Dylan. It's like, how do you prove on something that's already perfect? And I'm finding you do these little things on the board. You make these little changes that make it a little bit more enjoyable or a little bit more interesting. I noticed when I was listening to the remix and the 2009 reissue a little bit side by side. And what I've noticed is that the 2009 version plays loud. Plays louder than this 2019 remix. So
I noticed that too.
So if it's like on a 7, for the 2019, it's going to sound like maybe it's a 5. You know what I mean? If you're going by numbers on the volume. So that for me is a little bit more enjoyable at this little low volume, because then you can bring those other things up, like the drums and like the bass, and then you recognize it, I think, a little bit more, and it becomes a little more clear. And then I think you mess around with the channels a little bit. One of the things I noticed right off the bat was on You Never Give Me Your Money is that on the 2009 reissue, you get Paul's piano bit in your right channel, and then here on this you get it in both. And it just made it feel a little bit more powerful, like he's really going to say something important here.
Absolutely.
So those are just little differences that I noticed. But so let's talk about here, like Maxwell Silver Hammer. Again, I mean, it's just, for me, this album is their most perfectly sung album. I love all the singing on this album. For me, on every track is perfect. However, with the volume down and maybe some of the backing harmonies that come up now are a little more in your face, I think it just makes it even more enjoyable as well. Even though I wasn't really blown away by this remix, there's still enough there to really keep me interested, and maybe I will get that vinyl series. I shouldn't, but anyways. So Andy, what'd you think of Maxwell?
Maxwell, like in Guilty Pleasure, I love the song. Love it or hate it, I love it. I didn't really know until I guess it was those Rock Band mixes that came out. I wasn't even aware that there was a Moog on that track.
Okay.
I couldn't tell back when I was younger as a listener.
Right.
So, and then the Rock Band came out, and they had like the stems where you could actually just hear each track,
Right.
and manipulate it any way you want. And I listened to the whole track with the Moog playing, and it was like mind blowing. And now, in this remix, it's even a little more present now.
So I mean, ask you this: how many people do you think were doing that instead of actually playing the game?
Oh, probably lots, because probably lots. But that's where I first discovered that. So Maxwell's for me, I've always enjoyed. I liked seeing the history of it, learning about. Actually, it did originate in the Let It Be sessions with Mal hitting the anvil, as you can see in the Let It Be film. And I know that they all hated doing it. I mean, I don't even think John was even on the session because he was still recovering from the accident at the time.
Right.
So he was, right. I don't think he was there. But I've always loved Maxwell Silverhammer, macabre lyrics, but even the backing vocals, Maxwell must go free. Even all that is just tremendously done and performed well.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
Classic Paul talking, about writing stories about fictional people, which he did so well, which John could not stand, but Paul did so well, and Maxwell is just another example of that, and I've always loved it.
Yeah, I think Maxwell is great. I think the macabre lyrics, for anyone who talks down on that song, and I actually know one person back in Rhode Island who considers it their favorite Beatles song, which is questionable, but whatever.
Sweet
we all got. I know another guy who his favorite song used to be Piggies, so what can you do? But that's what makes it so great to me is the fact that it does have the nice jaunty music while he's singing about an actual serial killer. Like I think that's brilliant. And the backing vocals, especially at the end of the song on the Silver Hammer, are incredible.
Yeah.
I will say, talking about how perfect this album is, and I really do love this song. The sequencing is kind of hilarious when you think about the fact that the album starts with Come Together, which is such a major song, such a kick-ass rock and roll tune. And then you follow it up with one of the greatest songs ever written.
Right. And
then it's Maxwell. And the ending guitar, organ, string swell of something is the most beautiful thing you ever hear. And then to just immediately go into Maxwell, I can't criticize the sequencing of the record, but it's definitely like, oh, well, that's kind of a head scratcher. But that being said, I think on this new remix, at this point in the record, 3 songs in, I think this one is the best because I kind of have those slight issues with the bass and drums on Come Together and Something. But here they sound so natural. George's lead guitar sounds incredible. George Martin's organ on this tune, which I never noticed too much before this remix, sounds amazing. The Moog is great. I mean, it sounds so full. I agree with you, Tom. I mean, Paul's singing on this track, and everyone's singing across. The whole album is great. I don't know. Do you want to talk about all the outtakes later?
No, we won't necessarily get into outtakes. We'll just probably just talk about Goodbye and come and get it.
The only thing that I want to say is that with the outtake of Maxwell on this, you can totally hear in the outtake exactly why they all hated it. Even though at the end it's great to hear them like talking in good spirits, but like, Paul singing it, he hasn't figured it out yet. He kind of sounds like desperate singing the do-do-do-doos in the chorus, and like certain affectations are way too much. Like him doing the whole vocal solo was probably mind-numbing for the rest of them. Like it's amazing that the end product turned out as great as it did, because I was listening to that like, if I was George or Ringo, I would probably want to kill myself being a part of this session.
Well, one of the disappointing things about all these outtakes is that they're all pretty much as is. I mean, they're pretty much the song. They knew exactly what they wanted. Like, there's no real evolution to any of these songs because they're already
right. Isn't this the outtake that's on here also? Wasn't that outtake also on Anthology 3?
I think so. Yeah.
I think they're different takes, but they're so similar.
Sound very similar.
Yeah. Yeah, for me and for Maxwell Silverhammer, I mean, I like it seems a little bit more smoother here, but the thing is the hammer on the anvil doesn't sound as loud as it did on the original on the 2009 mix. But other than that, I think it's like you said, I mean, the harmonies really come out, and it's a great it's a great remix. I think this was one of the highlights for me on the album.
I agree.
For sure.
Next up,
I'm getting a whole bunch of messages here from my Talk More Talk people here.
Oh,
so if you have any news,
all right. Well, we'll jump right into "Oh Darlin'." How about that?
Yes, exactly. Let's do "Oh Darlin'."
"Oh Darlin'." "Oh Darlin'." Next track up. I mean, listen. Now that's McCartney at his vocal best. I mean, strongest killer. I mean, just an awesome vocal. I mean, and he worked, I mean, how long did he work on trying to get that vocal perfect?
Well, I was going to say it's probably over 100 takes, I think it was. It was
right?
Either like 92, some crazy amount of takes to finally get that voice, rough like that. And it's funny, getting to the outtakes is like, the music is all there, but you get, I think it's take 4 that's on this set.
On this set,
yeah. And it's just like,
he sounds meek.
He's not even anywhere near.
No, he's not. But again, another case where, because of where he lived, he just walked in and went in hours before the rest of them got from the suburbs and was like, look, I'm just going to hammer this out and try to get it until I can get it right.
Yeah.
Right.
You can tell listening to the outtake why John thought he would sing it better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I think by the time they got to the finished, vocal take, which I'm not sure which take it was without looking at my notes, but I think John definitely approved of that final one. But definitely early on, especially in that take 4, you can tell like John's probably going, I could have done a better job than that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for someone that knew what he wanted, some of these songs, it took him a while to finally, get either it was like the right, like on Obla Obla Dio Da, he didn't know how to open the damn song, and John finally came in there. Exactly. Right. With this one, he couldn't get the vocals exactly the way he wanted until like, take 150 or whatever it is. But Dylan, go ahead.
Yeah, I think of this. The bass sounds awesome on "Oh Darling," which is great, and it's nice to hear the backing vocals a little more prominent. I think that they sit better in the original mix, but again, it's still nice to hear it and go, okay, that's what they're doing. You can key into it more now if you're listening to the original mix. Like a lot of people I know were freaking out when this one came out, like, oh my god, like you can hear all the background vocals. Like, yeah, but I don't think that they're supposed to be that high. That's just my opinion, but overall it sounds great. John's piano sounds great on this. I don't have too much more to say on it, but I think it sounds great.
One of the things I loved about the Imagine John Lennon box set was there's a couple isolated vocal tracks. This song would have been a perfect isolated vocal track. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just him belting out, the old darlings and the woo and all that stuff. It would have been amazing to hear. But I agree with you guys again. I mean, again, the backing vocals are kick ass here.
And it's also one of those songs that, and all the songs he's covered live since as a solo musician. This is one he's never tackled,
I think Rocky Raccoon is another one.
This is what, and God, I mean, it's just a shame that he could. This is, of course, he's never going to do it now, but this would have been this.
What are you insinuating, sir?
Why do you say that?
It's not happening. It's not. Now, you listen to like Paul, like 72, 73 Wings when he was really rocking it. He could.
The Wings Over Europe. He probably could have.
I mean, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine, Steve Betchler, who follows also both our shows, your show and ours also, and he was like, that McCartney in that Live Over Europe bonus, he goes, that's McCartney doing "Oh Darling." That's him channeling that voice, and it really is.
Right. Yeah, I think I agreed 100%. I'm torn. When I listen to Something, that's my favorite track on this album. But then when I listen to You Never Give Me My Money, or No, You Never Give Me Your Money, that's my favorite track on this album. So it's just like it goes back.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
It goes back and forth. But, like I mentioned earlier about the but the piano, I just noticed right off the bat where you hear it on the 2009, you just hear it in one channel, and then with this new remix, it's just in both, and it's really intensified it a little bit and made it a little bit more enjoyable. And then once those vocals come in on both channels, I mean, just really, again. This is Paul at his vocal best, during his, Beatles tenure, and
Absolutely.
and there's also another thing I noticed too is the guitar solo at the end. It's a little bit more out as well. If you notice that, yeah. So, but Dylan?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that in addition to the piano being moved more to the center, it's great to hear the "out of college money spent" that whole bit, because those vocals are originally, I think, panned hard right. Hearing those in the middle,
that's the part of the song when I heard this remix, I'm like, holy crap, that part, that is like that part right there. The first half it kind of sounds the same, but as soon as it gets to that "out of college money spent" and the vocals are oh my god,
it's so full, it's great, and then all the ahs that lead into the one sweet dream section. I mean, that all sounds incredible,
tremendous,
and the other. One, I don't know why this hit me as hard as it did, but at the very end of the One Sweet Dream section, doing the "came true today," the "yes it did," that punches so nicely. Right. And then oddly enough, and I could be wrong in this, but it sounds like all the little nods that he does after that, right before the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it sounds like they fade a little quicker.
Yeah.
Okay. Which I thought was interesting, but it was just all those little things. It was like, wow, I didn't realize that would make that much of a difference. Tom, it's so funny. Like, that's exactly, something is objectively maybe the best song on the record and subjectively probably my favorite, but listening so much to "You Never Give Me Your Money" recently, I'm like, this might be the greatest song ever written.
Right.
So good.
The take
again, he had a purpose.
He did. He absolutely did. The take 36 though, outtake. That's something I hadn't heard before. Like all that like kind of creepy whispering in the beginning. I'm like, what is this?
Right.
What am I listening
it's so
to?
funny.
And he's singing it in that falsetto voice, and thought he was going to go into "Girlfriend" or So Bad or something like that. Right.
I was like,
I think that's the first time we've heard him sing in that falsetto singing voice as well.
Yeah.
So,
but he sounds totally spent on that outtake, but it's still like really fascinating to hear him working through it. But sorry, what were you going to say, Andy?
Oh no, I was just following up with what Tom was saying about "You Never Give Me Your Money." But I was going to say that. I think it's he's channeling, he's writing about stuff that is just pissing him off incredibly, the money, Allan Klein. I mean, this is the state of when they had that huge fight and they made him sign the contract, and here he is channeling his anger and just kicking ass in a song that is just, to your point, it was like probably one of the best songs on the album. I mean,
and it's so mellow. It's almost kind of like, Every Breath You Take. It's like it's so mellow, but it's got a little bit more of a, purpose behind the vocals.
Yeah, you just, because these are guys who were like 30 years old and just didn't know anything about business, and like all of a sudden they're thrusted into this crap and dealing with it, and it's like, and they don't know what they're doing. So what is, what do they know? They know how to be musicians, and they just they took their angst and their creativity and they channeled it into just a freaking great song.
Yeah, very true, very true. Then we go to another one of my favorites, probably 3 or 4 favorite on this album. She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. Again, another very well sung song. Some of the best. My very first Beatles bootleg, I think it was called the Black Album, which were outtakes of the Get Back sessions. And there's some of this on there of them, practicing the song. It's really cool to listen to. Again, it's so close to this finished product, and they're just bringing it in January, or he's just bringing it in January, and then
during Let It Be, right? Yeah,
and then come June, July, September, August, it's not far from from what they were practicing in January. It's pretty amazing. But again, this one I did notice. The bass and drums a little bit more up on this one, and this is probably Ringo's best fills song, in my opinion.
Up there, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Abbey Road in general, from a musical, an instrumental standpoint at least, Paul, George, and Ringo, it might all be their finest moments. My friend and I have done so many, top 10 George guitar performances, top 10 McCartney, top 10 Ringo, and it's amazing. Like 5 or 6 of those 10 are just all songs from Abbey Road. They all sound incredible, and the drums.
And it's funny because Andy, you were saying with the business and the stress from all that stuff, and here they are going through all that, and they make the most perfect album.
And then they said, "That's it, we're done. See ya."
Amazing.
Sorry, Dylan, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
Oh no, not at all. Yeah, the drums do sound great, and they sound great in Polythene Pam, which obviously precedes this, and the acoustic sounds so powerful in Polythene Pam as well. And I like that the acoustic also sounds as powerful as it does, and She Came Through the Bathroom Window. I think a lot of people underestimate. I'm pretty sure that's John on the acoustic here, and it's so important to the song, and the background vocals on the remix sound unbelievable. Right. Yeah, it's interesting that they would cover a Joe Cocker song on their last record.
That's my personal favorite Beatles cover song right there.
It's a great one.
Yeah,
it's good.
His version of Something is also very.
His version of Bathroom Window is almost as good as Matchbox 20's version of it.
Oh, interesting. Well,
there was a fun. I never knew too. A little side.
I'm kidding.
That's funny. No, I actually. I never knew actually until like the CD era, like that. Actually, the beginning of She Came In Through the Bathroom Window was like the end of Polythene Pam. I never knew that. If you like how to see how the CD was banded, actually why? Because as a kid, before you never knew, and like actually putting on CD, I'm like, wait a minute, you just naturally think the beginning of She Came Through the Bathroom Window is when it crash and it goes right into it. No, it doesn't. It's the last few strains of Polythene Pam, which was just a little geek, fact for me that I thought was pretty cool as a young fan growing up. And like, wait a minute, I remember my cousin telling me, I said, no, that's the beginning. And then he's like, no, look at the CD. It starts. She Came Through the Bathroom Window starts there. It was just cool.
Well, that's the great thing about podcasting. Podcasting is all about us talking about our favorite geek facts.
That's it.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
it. And wasn't this also based on? It was based on a true story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
Somebody stuck into his house in St. John's Wood, I think.
Yeah, all the apple scruffs hanging out there.
No doubt.
Oh, those apple scruffs. Oh, man.
So
but,
then
we got what? Golden Slumbers. We got Carry That Way at the end. We can do that all as one.
Sure.
They're okay.
Yeah, they're all right.
They're just okay.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, it's not my favorite moment, actually. I know Paul's got that most iconic, lyric there at the end of the end, but the guitar, duel is interesting. Paul singing Golden Slumbers is fantastic, but it's just for some reason these three songs together just never grabbed me.
Wow.
As much as like
That's
something, as much as Window and Money,
How does it feel to be so wrong about something?
It feels good, and you know what? I'm going to sleep well tonight too.
Okay. So,
don't ask me how I'm going to sleep, okay?
Look, if that's your prerogative, that's fine. I just you should know exactly how wrong you are.
That's fine.
No, I mean, certainly if that's your opinion, I get it. I think that they're all. I think this is probably what John was focusing on when he was complaining about the fact that they're all just little bits
fragments thrown together. But I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's perfect, and I mean the orchestra on Golden Slumbers sounds amazing. My only thing with this string of 3 songs on the remix, and I might be the only one that's mad about this, but I think one of the coolest parts on the whole album is the You Never Give Me Your Money reprise in Carry That Way.
The best.
And on the I never give you my pillow, I only send you my invitations, there's this great piano going along with it, and on the remix it's not as prominent as it should be, and I almost threw something across the room because I didn't hear enough piano.
Right. You know, it's
But
funny
other than that,
yeah, it's funny because you talk about all these fragments and how John wasn't, that interested in them, but these songs were there. He wasn't that into the band at the time, I don't think, or at least he wasn't bringing, he wasn't bringing a lot of material. So
No.
I mean, what else are you gonna do with those songs that need to get, on a record? So I get both sides of his, story, but then again, I mean, you got to get these songs out.
No, you have to.
Yeah.
Go this end of the album here is my favorite part of the whole album. Period. I think
Right.
it is. It just is.
Nice having you as my co-host.
No, it is.
Listen, I'm with Andy. This is 2 against 1.
This is the high watermark of the album. This is a high watermark for popular music. Period. This suite of 3 songs.
I understand.
This is it. I mean, and that is accentuated by, as Dylan mentioned, the reprise of "You Never Give Me Your Money." I mean, that is a spine-tingling goosebump moment. And to actually, Billy Joel actually even talks about this. It's on YouTube somewhere. He's talking about how the Beatles structure songs. And he was actually talking about how he put scenes from an Italian restaurant together, how it was very fragmented, and he used "Golden Slumbers Carry That Weight," the end, as the example, and then how and he was even like geeking out, like, oh my God, and they went back, and he goes, they did it again, and you get to hear Billy Joel get excited about it. You know that this is a special piece of music, in my opinion. And the fact that I've had a chance to see him do it live, and he closes most of his shows with it now, is pretty special. And again, when he first did it in '89, '90 for the Tripping the Life Fantastic, again, that was like 20 years later, and it was like, wow, okay, he's coming to terms with it, and it's okay. And it's awesome. And for me, and then on the outtake was actually, again, never heard that before, was the little intro of Fool on the Hill. That was great.
Right.
Yeah.
That was so cool. I had never heard that. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
Really
Wait a minute.
cool.
Like 5 seconds of Fool on the Hill, and then he goes into it proper. And the outtake is just, I think, is also almost just as good.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear it stripped down without the orchestra.
Yes.
George and Ringo.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And I do think I think Ringo's, Carry That Weight is out just a touch more. And what was the other thing I had too? Oh, the Love Yous during the end, I think comes out a little bit more as well. So I think that was very noticeable. So, yeah.
I just want to share quickly. I learned something about those Love Yous recently. So if you go on YouTube, you can hear the whole medley, just the vocal tracks. Okay. And when it gets to the Love Yous, there's this impossibly high vocal, and we couldn't figure out, because when it started, I'm like, okay, well, that's probably just Paul doing falsetto, but then it goes to this impossibly high note that I know even Paul can't hit with the clarity that I was hitting it, and so me and my friends were debating like if they brought in someone else to do it, but we figured out that Paul actually sang it at a lower key, and then they very speeding.
They brought it up. Yeah,
little studio trickery there, huh?
Yeah,
it's
an A5 for all you vocal geeks out there.
Ooh, excuse me.
Yeah, it's just, I think, one step above or one step below the the high note that Paul hits on Helter Skelter on the lookout at the very end. So
gotcha.
Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Moving on to the last song that shouldn't have been there. Yeah. Well, originally they didn't want it there, but
okay, I get what you're saying.
Luckily for us, it's there.
Okay.
Because I love this track. I want that to be known. Yeah. However, I did notice something different on this one. I don't know if you listened to the 2009 mix. His first go around of Her Majesty is almost kind of like an echo as he's doing it, from a distance. With this one, it sounds like it's a little more closer to you. You don't have that much of echo of it, and I think I kind of enjoy that remix a little bit more than that that distant echo.
I do too.
9 remix. So, but Andy.
I like it. I actually kind of would have preferred if they had left it where it was in the medley. I'm going to go against the grain on that.
Ooh,
I'm not going to be one of these Beatle purists. So that's how they left it, and that's how they wanted it. I kind of like how it was written actually in the long one. sandwiched
Right.
in between Polythene Pam and Mr. Mugg. I like it. I like that. I like that. I like how it flows.
It's interesting. I think
I would have. I would have.
it's
You know what? And I thought I actually liked listening to it that way better. I do.
cool.
Because I love the Golden Slumbers medley. So
Right.
and on that, and it's cool, and it's still cool. I mean, it's 23 seconds long. It's of course
Right.
in the Beatles fashion. That's how they do it. And
Well, it's just like the end should be the end. There should be no surprise, And my feeling is that is so perfect of an ending. You shouldn't end it like for me on Flaming Pie. Beautiful Night should end that album. Great Day should not be after A Beautiful Night. That should be prior. I think you end Flaming Pie with Beautiful Night. And here's Dylan, just shaking his head.
I could go both. I could go either way. I like it. Could end with Beautiful Night or Great Day. Either way.
Great Day is the perfect way to end that record.
I got to agree with
Dylan.
I got to agree with Dylan on that one. I have to because
I don't know.
No, because Beautiful Night ends with all that Ringo hokery Joking and stuff. Great Day is just chill.
You end the album with an epic, in my opinion, and I think that's a great way to. Okay.
Yeah, but
I'm not going to get into it for numerous reasons.
No, let me just say the Great Day ending that album closes that, encapsulates the entire theme of that album.
Okay.
And closes it, and because it starts with the song we were singing, great, and it ends with Great Day, and it bookends the theme of that entire album, in my opinion.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Side note.
All right. Well, we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have fun talking
it.
Flaming Pie when that comes up.
maybe before the end of the year too.
Exactly.
Who knows?
Rumor has it that we might be getting an announcement soon. So
hopefully.
Yes. Any thoughts on Her Majesty there, Dylan?
Well, I mean, Andy's talking about the high watermark. I mean, Her Majesty is certainly the high watermark of this record, I would say. Songwriting, performance. I mean, I don't see how you can argue with it. But yeah, I like that the quality is clear. I love that the panning is
right.
As strong as it is. Although I think it was the right decision to take it out of the medley. However, it is interesting. I forget where I heard or read this recently, but thinking about had it stayed in Mean Mr. Mustard with him saying takes her out to look at the Queen and then having Her Majesty there.
Right. That sounds
Never
cool.
thought of that before. Yeah. It works. I mean, you know what? I know that this has been said before. I know that this isn't any original thought of mine, but I think it's the perfect way to end the record because the Beatles wouldn't be the Beatles without their sense of humor. That was such an integral part to who they were. I was talking with my friend recently, and he was saying that Revolver would be such a better record without Yellow Submarine, and he's entitled to that opinion, and I get where he's coming from. But to me, Yellow Submarine is a part of the Beatles experience, and you can't not, in my opinion, you can't not have it on that record in the same way that you can't not have For No One on that record.
Fair enough. Yeah.
In the same way, like having Her Majesty after whatever it is, 20 seconds of this amazing, grand, epic finale, and you don't know at the time in 1969 that it's going to be, the last thing that they recorded, the last thing of their career.
Right.
But to know that they knew, and I know that there's the reemergence of the tape, of them talking about John saying, well, maybe we should have something for Christmas, but I really think that deep down they all knew this was it, and the fact that they knew this was it and that they left Her Majesty at the end is so perfect because there was so much of what they did that were happy little accidents, and it's a part of what makes them them. I can't imagine it without it, and it's because I've been hearing it the same way for 20 years, I'm sure. But I really love it. I think it's a great little piece, and when people talk about doing the medley, my first question is always, well, did you do Her Majesty? Because it's important.
It's part of it. It's part of it. Yeah. And he did play it live once too in front of Her Majesty.
Really?
I did not know that.
He did.
Ah.
He did.
Okay,
I think
very
it might have
cool.
been the party at the Palace in 2002.
Okay.
I think, yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, he did play it in front of her.
Very cool. Very cool.
I learned something every new. I learn something new every time I listen to Two-Leg. Sorry, I'm very, very intoxicated right now.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that was. I think you guys are right. It's cool to have Her Majesty in there, but I also think it's right to not have it in there. You know what I mean? It's cool to have it in both forms.
Yeah.
You know. So whatever.
And if you want to hear it with the medley, now you can in a nice clean version.
Exactly.
And if you don't, you just listen to the regular one.
Exactly.
Choice is yours.
Andy, did you had a bootleg version of Goodbye, correct? I mean, I think you're a big bootleg guy, right?
I am.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh. You're gonna have to edit that part out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've had Goodbye for probably for 25 or 30 years. Yeah.
Right. And does it sound better than the quality that's on this box set?
No.
No. Okay.
It's the same. That was disappointing. It really was.
Right. Yeah.
It might the original copy of it just might be compromised. They might not have been able to clean it up.
No, and I think at this point, 50 years on, Giles and the team are saying, you know what, we'll clean it up the best way we can, and we're going to put it out there. And you know what, it's coming from us, and it's sanitized, and it's got our blessing. So if it's as good as it can be, they'll take it anyway.
And I think it's important for us to have it in a set like this as well. Paul McCartney, in my opinion, was probably the greatest singer-songwriter and musician at that time in 1969, 68, 69. The guy was hot.
Yep.
Every single of his that he's on lead vocals was number one. He's giving away songs that are becoming top 5, top 3 hits, and he's just everything he's contributing to the other 3 Beatles are making the songs better as well.
Right.
So I don't think there's anybody hotter at that time than Paul McCartney. So
no, I will.
It's cool.
I will say though, I do prefer Mary Hopkins' version over
really?
his demo.
Okay.
I do.
All right. Well, he's all over that song anyways.
Right.
So,
The production, and obviously the production is so
Exactly.
much more. It's
Right.
it's much more polished and everything on that version.
Yeah. What's your opinion on the Goodbye there, Dylan?
Yeah. My hot take on this song is that I'm really not in love with the chorus. I think everything else is great. I mean, the melody is such a perfect classic McCartney melody. I agree with Andy in the sense that the chorus, I think, works far better on the Mary Hopkin version, having kind of the call and response goodbyes. Just there's always been something that's rubbed me the wrong way about this particular version, just the way that the chorus goes. I don't know if it's the simplicity of it, and not that simplicity ever bothers me, but melodically, lyrically, it just has never hit me that much, and I think the rest of the song is really, really great. But in that respect, I really the rest of the song I think is really great, and I'm such a sucker for listening to Paul sing alone with an acoustic guitar.
Right.
I mean, I think what that guy could do with that instrument, and sure, he's a great piano player and a great everything player, but what he can do with just the acoustic guitar and his voice, I don't think there's anything better than that. And so for that alone, I think this demo sounds great.
Cool. Very cool. Come and Get It. Last track we'll talk about. Again, another, like we said at the beginning of this segment, 1 hour. That's all you can really.
It probably is my favorite Beatles outtake, in the entire discography. I mean, gotcha. I remember when I got Anthology 3. I mean, I just played that track over and over and over and over again. It was that good. As Dylan said, it's probably better than Badfinger's version. Sorry, but
right.
I love Badfinger's version too.
I do too. I do. That's how good. It is something I could. And again, he played it live a couple of years ago, and that was like, wow, this is so cool. It's the perfect. It's 2.5 minutes of perfection. It's what it is. It's
top perfection.
all by himself, drums, and then And
he did it. He did it in a shorter amount of time than this podcast is going to end up being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Insane.
Good points. Good point.
Good
my friend.
point.
Good point. And the fact that he was originally commissioned to do this song himself. I mean, I think he was commissioned to do 3 songs
for the Magic Christian. The Magic Christian. Right. So it was.
They were up in the air with the Ivies.
Right.
At that time, which with this song they became Badfinger.
Yeah, right. This was their first one as Badfinger.
Yeah,
right.
this was their pretty much not necessarily their big break, because I think maybe Tomorrow was probably their first big break song. But then with this, I mean, this really hit their potential. You can really see what they were capable at. What they could do as a band, even though it was note for note for what McCartney did, but you got to see their potential and what lied ahead for Badfinger. So it was really cool that they gave him this song. So
where do you think?
Totally.
I was just to say where do you think if he decided to keep it for the Beatles, sequencing wise, where do you think it would went on the album?
I think they would have used it for a single.
Yeah, oh, okay. Like they did in the old days, where they just released a single, not from an album.
The single. Yeah, just like Battle of John and Yoko.
Right.
Arguably, what they should have done was put it before Maxwell, after Something, so the sequencing from Something into Maxwell isn't as awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
Fair enough.
But I digress.
But I think one other little side note that I want to talk about too about the box set is the Ballad of John and Yoko, with just John and Paul on there, and you really get the feel that Paul's in heaven, because ultimately it was him and John. They pretty much were. The Beatles were their baby. I mean, I know they say John was pretty much the guy that started the band, which fair enough. But I mean, it was those two that it was their magic, their songwriting abilities that made the band. And listening to this, probably the last time those two, worked together that closely.
And you hear at the end of that take how happy both of them are.
Yes,
which is
happy.
Awesome.
So happy.
And after all these years, being teased with the whole, John calling Paul Ringo and him calling John, after
we finally could hear it. We've read that in how many books? And now we finally heard it. Now that we have it, it's just awesome.
It's great. Well, and I never, I knew when that and Old Brown Shoe were recorded, but I'd never ever thought of them as Abbey Road songs. Like, I've always thought of Revolution and Hey Jude as White Album songs. Right. Even from when I heard them and I knew when they were recorded, I'm like, that makes sense. But these two in my head. Yeah,
you don't feel like Abbey Road songs.
No.
Because Abbey Road
kind of like
is
Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields feel like Strawberry Fields. I mean, they feel like Sgt. Pepper songs. Yeah. So I totally understand where you're going with that.
Yeah. I'm also going to go on record, and again, we'll go more into this when we do the show on Paul's drumming. I am not buying any of the talk about Paul playing drums on Old Brown Shoe. That is absolutely not Paul. Yeah. I don't know if did that come from Lewison or
I don't know yet.
No, I don't know. I don't know if it came from Lewison. No.
I don't think it came. Mark is smarter than that. I don't. This is not Paul playing drums, but We'll get to that.
We'll get to that, yeah. So exactly. So we'll end it right there. But yeah, we're going to have you on again. We're going to get you. We're going to get you a drum. We're going to fly a brand new drum set to you. We're going to
do
set
not
you
make
up
promises you can't keep.
Fair enough, my friend. Fair enough. But anyways, we're going to try to figure out a way to have you do a McCartney drumming styling show, and we're really going to find out if indeed he was a lazy drummer or not. And we'll go from there. And there's a lot there in his solo career. You got the McCartney album. You got a lot of Band on the Run, which you could arguably say he was the fifth drummer of the band. Because the fact that he played the drums on that whole album. You got his drumming. Was the McCartney 2 all drum machine, or did he actually do some drumming on McCartney 2?
There's some drumming on that. Some.
That's the only album where every single voice and instrument is him.
Nobody knows.
Even the first record,
nobody knows his drumming. That's him drumming on that.
Yeah. I think.
And I think
there might be a couple more.
And coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a dark room is definitely mostly a machine, but I feel like maybe there's one or two. I don't know. I could be wrong.
On the way, maybe.
Yeah, on the way is probably him.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So cool. So what we'll do is we'll keep in touch, and we'll shoot some songs back and forth between the three of us, and we'll see if we can, hammer down some songs that you can easily perform, and we'll talk about it and get your opinions on it, and you can kind of give us an idea of how all that went. So we're really looking forward to that. Dylan, I really can't thank you enough for all the time and energy you put into, doing those songs, helping us out with that. Is there any contact information? Or are you doing anything soon? Are you gigging or anything you want to plug? So now's the time to do it.
Yeah, I'm playing drums right now, like I said, with this guy, Aaron Lee Tasjan. His last name is spelled Tasjan, and he is, just an unbelievable singer, songwriter, guitar player. He is like a one-man traveling Wilburys, and I've told him that to his face. Total, loves the Beatles, grew up on Petty and Dylan and all the guys, and he's really remarkable. We're doing a tour next month, mostly in the Midwest. We're opening up for the Marcus King Band. Okay. And that should be a lot of fun. I'm on all the websites, Twitter and Instagram. It's just my name, DylanSevey. I'm the one with the semi-Ringo-ish looking hair and really annoying posts. And that's really all I got to say. But I want to thank you for asking me to do it and for asking me to come on the show. This is my very first podcast appearance, and I hope I didn't totally blow it. Hope I passed the audition.
No, I think I was just gonna say, I think you definitely passed, and you did a great job. Very, very clean, as they say.
Yeah.
No, you were great.
He's very clean.
Yeah, exactly. But anything, Andy, is anything you want to plug or anything like that? You want to get out there?
Yeah, just we have our regular, this is going to be on YouTube now, so we have our Two Legs YouTube page, so this will be on that. And you can find me on all regular social media. Just search me up on Andy Nichols, and I'm part of the same social networks that Tom and I are involved with, and I'm a regular watcher and viewer of Talk More Talk, which is great podcast also. And you can find me on all those usual websites and email address, same deal. If you want to hit me up, you can.
Cool. Yeah, same here. You can find me on Facebook, and we got our Facebook page, Two Legs, a Paul McCartney Podcast. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Two Legs Podcast. Like you said, Andy, we are now on YouTube. Dylan, you are a part of our very first, hopefully, video show. We're all, like I said earlier, we're we got so many things, so many ideas that we want to get going and try, and this was the first idea that I was happy that Andy agreed that he wanted to be a part of video, and I think this is going to be a great touch to the show. You can email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com if you want to get a hold of us. So that's it right now as a nutshell. We're going to be back next week as well. We got our first guest that Andy and I are going to be interviewing, a gentleman all the way in the UK. So we're looking forward to that. And guys, as once again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for taking the time. And as always, have a great day and a beautiful night. Take care.
See you next time.
Listening to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, hosted by Tom Hunyadi and Andy Nichols, with musical contributions by Dylan